You know, every year I try to make some video that predicts Summer Games Fest or recaps the big announcements from Summer Games Fest, and it never really goes well. I don't get most of my predictions right, and the videos don't generate a lot of views, at least as much as I would want, and ultimately, I just look the fool indeed. So today, I plan on just doing that again, because I cannot help myself. I am ready for Jeff Fest. Look, I have come to terms that Summer Games Fest is not E3. There's a reason why so many big announcements for these major showcases are leaking early, and it's because they need to get people to tune in. They need to drum up hype. This isn't the E3 of old where companies put their best foot forward to woo the consumer. This isn't the Game Awards where companies know that they're gonna have tens of millions of viewers to advertise to all at once. The biggest announcements, they don't really need to be here. This is really for the fans. And even then, the console manufacturers feel comfortable putting out announcements at different times in the year. Microsoft seems to have major events early in the year, and Sony seems to have its major showcase around September. Nintendo will probably show up with a direct, but they can also do that anytime. So yeah, keep your expectations in check for this one. With that said, what are we getting and what are we not getting at Summer Games Fest? Yeah, you're not getting a Switch 2 announcement here. This is not going to be the big reveal of the Switch 2. We know that the hardware will not be released before April 2025, meaning at best, you're not getting the big blowout until late 2024, and even then, you might be waiting until early 2025. Whatever Nintendo shows off, it is going to be Nintendo Switch games first and foremost. Not games for the new hardware. And with that said, you might want to expect this to be a pretty weak showcase. Historically, when a new generation is on the horizon, Nintendo's E3 conferences were never that great because they're saving all the good stuff for the launch of the new hardware. Granted, this time it is a bit different, with reports of the Switch 2 supporting OG Switch games with backwards compatibility. It's possible that this showcase is different, but I still wouldn't count on it. There's just no reason to build up a ton of hype, get people buying these Nintendo Switches at the end of their life cycle. And that's gonna change how they do announcements. So here's my predictions. I think the big reveals are going to be either the Metroid Prime remastered trilogy. The second and third games still need to be remastered after the first one was a few years ago, and we might even get a Metroid Prime 4 at the end of the year. Look, I've said this before, Metroid is not a massive franchise compared to Nintendo's other titles, never selling tens of millions of units, but it does have a very hardcore fan base of Nintendo fans. The series could be on an upwards trajectory, and they could position it as something that could take off with the next generation as a launch title. But I'm not confident in that. Launching a Switch 2 with Metroid Prime 4, a sequel to a trilogy that released, like almost 2 decades ago, that will appeal to the hardcore Nintendo fans, but those are the same people buying the Switch 2 at launch. It is just not a great choice for a launch title, in my opinion. Look, people often get confused why games like Call of Duty continue releasing on last-gen consoles well after those consoles have become irrelevant. And it's because those older platforms are not irrelevant. They have millions of users, tens of millions of users, more than the current gen boxes. And when it comes to a Switch 2, you're not going to get 100+ million units sold on day one, or year one, or possibly even year 5. The install base of the OG hardware is simply larger, and if you want to grow Metroid as a brand, which I imagine is Nintendo's intent, it makes more sense to launch this on the original Nintendo Switch. And the ideal time for this would be late 2024. I'm just guessing, I don't know, maybe it's not true, but it could be. There are rumors suggesting a Zelda game starring Zelda, surprisingly. Data shows a new 3D Mario is in development, but that is probably almost definitely for the Switch 2, so don't expect it here. The new Pokemon Legends game is probably a Switch 2 title. That's at least what I'm thinking, since they haven't shown any real gameplay for it yet. Doesn't mean it won't run on the original hardware, just might mean that it's built primarily for the next-gen machine. I do expect some Pokemon announcements though, at least a new mystery dungeon. I think I say this every year, but it's always a rumor, and I think it would make for a nice end of life cycle game for this OG Switch. And yeah, don't expect any major revisions to Nintendo Switch Online. Don't expect like GameCube games coming to the service. I've given up hope for stuff like a Nintendo 64 Mini. Yeah, Nintendo is just in an awkward position this year with new hardware being on everybody's mind. There's just not a lot they can do. But that doesn't mean they won't show off interesting games. Just don't expect mega hits. Don't expect a new Mario Kart or a Smash Bros. Or a mainline Animal Crossing entry. As of the time I'm writing this, we don't know if Sony is going to do a PlayStation Showcase or a State of Play, and the difference between the two is significant. One, the Showcase is a major event. The other, State of Play, is barely worth tuning in for, to be honest. But I suspect we're getting something in the middle this time around. It does not make sense for Sony to do a major event in June 2024. I do not expect a PlayStation Showcase, because I think that's coming in September. It just would work so much better. Sony does not have a ton of major announcements they need to make this year. We know that 2024 is going to be a slow year for PlayStation mega hits for major AAA titles. The big announcement for the year is the PlayStation 5 Pro, which is something you're probably not going to see announced until late 2024. At least something that won't get revealed until late 2024 in its entirety. I do think that the PlayStation 5 Pro deserves its own event, or maybe it will be a part of a larger PlayStation showcase focused on all the major releases planned for the second half of the PlayStation 5's life cycle. But I do not expect that here. So what will we be getting? There was a new Astrobot game that leaked. I'm excited for this. I enjoyed the Astrobot game that was included on PlayStation 5. A new entry sounds exciting. We know Concord, an upcoming FPS PvP game developed by Firewalk Studios, is probably going to show up. And being a PlayStation 5 and PC release, I expect Sony to really emphasize this thing, because Sony wants to make the whole PC thing work out. They've had a lot of good luck, a lot of success in the PC market lately, and it's expected that more PlayStation ports are coming. One I'm hoping for, and one that is rumored, is Gravity Rush 2. Yes, it is weird that they would bring a sequel to a poorly selling PS Vita game to the PC, especially since Sony has shut down the studio that made the game. But with a Gravity Rush movie in development and a wonderful game readily available that not that many people played, re-releasing this for PC and PS5 would get a lot more people into the whole Gravity Rush thing. Or maybe none of this. Yeah, since this is probably a State of Play, don't expect that much. Don't expect Wolverine. I wouldn't even count on Marathon by Bungie. That Lego Horizon game? Probably not. Look, I just think it makes more sense for Sony to focus their efforts, their big announcements, on a September reveal of the PlayStation 5 Pro. Build up hype for that machine. Get people to pre-order the box after seeing major reveals of big titles, AAA blockbusters, and it would be a waste to do that in June. So there has already been a lot of leaks regarding the Xbox Showcase, what may or may not show up. Perfect Dark, Gears of War 6, maybe a Gears trilogy, Doom, The Dark Ages, these should probably make an appearance. Black Ops 6 is obviously getting a major showcase, but I think the question on everybody's mind is going to be, which games going forward will be Xbox exclusive and which are coming to PlayStation? Now, personally, I fall into the camp of expecting that every single game that appears at this showcase will make its way to PlayStation eventually. I do think that the future of Xbox is as a multi-platform publisher, that the home of Xbox will be on the Windows operating system more so than it is right now. A true PC storefronts, you know? And I'll explain that all in future videos that probably won't appear on this channel. But yeah, a lot of people are going to be interested in this. The question is whether Microsoft discloses this at this event. And honestly, I don't think they will. These events are usually catered towards the hardcore fans, and right now there's not a lot of optimism in the Xbox community. I think that's something they need to build up. Sure, these games might be coming to PlayStation, but that's not something they need to point out right Now, I do not expect Phil Spencer to walk out on stage and say, hey guys, the next Xbox is actually just a set of specifications for PC builds. Or, hey, Halo Master Chief Collection is arriving on PlayStation 5 later this year, because that's just not gonna get some positive headlines. The people watching this are Xbox fans. Any of these announcements, these major shifts in the Xbox brand, that's better done for a press release, or maybe the Game Awards, where more eyes from non-Xbox fan eyes specifically will be watching the events. There's a right way and a wrong way to do this, to announce Microsoft leaving the traditional console business. And Summer Games Fest is not the right way. As for game announcements, I would love to see a Forza Horizon take place in Hawaii, but with Playground Games focused on Fable, I'm not expecting that. As for Fable, I have no idea. I doubt we'll see much from Halo, although I could be wrong. We do know a new game is in development using Unreal Engine, but I doubt that there's enough in development to show off. I think Spyro 4 will be teased by Toys for Bob, which is not owned by Microsoft anymore. I mean, Spyro is, Toys for Bob isn't. And I do know Microsoft has, like I mentioned, a lot of projects unaccounted for. Some will almost definitely appear. Avowed, maybe State of Decay 3, but I'm not expecting a ton of new announcements. We'll definitely get Indiana Jones by Machine Games, which is a 2024 release. Probably see gameplay for that, but don't expect Everwild or The Outer Worlds 2, or definitely not Elder Scrolls 6. Starfield DLC, sure. Maybe if you're lucky, a Fallout 3 remaster, or even better, a remake, but yes, no Elder Scrolls 6. I would keep expectations in check for Microsoft because it seems like they've just announced so many things. They've gotten ahead of themselves so far in advance, and they're still trying to catch up. As for the Activision Blizzard acquisition, I think people are expecting a big blowout of Tony Hawk Pro Skater 3+4 Remake, Hexen, all these other games from IPs they've just recently acquired, but it's probably too soon for that. We know that Activision was canning a lot of games, or not greenlighting a lot of games from these IPs before they were acquired, and there just hasn't been enough time to get teams together and build these games up. Maybe we will see older Activision titles finally get rolled out onto Game Pass, but beyond this, I'm not expecting a ton from Activision Blizzard. Or maybe I'm completely wrong. Microsoft is in a unique position. They know the competition that Nintendo and Sony is not going to bring their A game. They know that they could make Summer Games Fest 2024 the year of Xbox, because they're really the only console manufacturer that needs to show something off. I don't know if they want to do a smoke and mirrors conference showing off stuff that won't appear until 2030, but they absolutely could. If they want to just instill a sense of good feelings in the Xbox community, that's how you do it. Or maybe they'll drop the ball. We'll find out. In terms of other announcements, don't expect GTA 6 news. The game is set for a late 2025 release. Does not make a ton of sense to drop some major trailer during Summer Games Fest, where it's competing with so many other games for the news cycle. This is more of a Game Awards sort of thing, and even then, I wouldn't really expect it. You'll probably see Skate, you know, the Skate reboot, Silk Song, I would expect that there. But yeah, that's the thing about Summer Games Fest. It's just not a major event. It's not E3. But even still, I do enjoy it. A lot of the best announcements from Summer Games Fest for me are games from smaller studios, new IPs, stuff that just looks interesting. I hope to see a lot of this stuff here. I know that this doesn't get as much attention, and it doesn't make for particularly good predictions, because what I'm most excited for is stuff that I can't predict. And that's how I would approach this event. Go into it with an open mind. This isn't E3, this isn't the Game Awards. It's just a nice showcase of some games, and you might get some big reveals, but you probably won't. But you might.